Hello everyone, my name is Phawx. This is going to be my video on the SteamDeck versus the AYANEO 2. There's a bunch to unpack here, so I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as I can. With regard to the benchmarks, I targeted a bunch of different video game engines. So the engines that we're going to be testing are Unreal Engine 3, Unreal Engine 4, the Red Engine 3, the Decima engine, the latest Rage engine, which is in Red Dead Redemption 2, the Dawn engine, Rebellion's Asura engine, and the Crystal engine. Now I have 9 different games that I've benchmarked. 2 of them are using Unreal Engine 3, and there's some interesting data there that I wanted to kind of touch base on before we go too much further. I'll talk a little bit about the benchmarks in a moment. Before we get into that, the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that some different comparisons here, and to understand that TDP is only one metric, and we have to look at some other factors there. And ultimately, that even if we have the AYANEO 2 at 15 watt and the SteamDeck at 15 watt, compared to each other, the SteamDeck is using a half a watt to 1 watt more total power than the AYANEO 2 is. And I have an inkling of an idea there, and I was leading towards down LPDDR5 being an issue, but it looks like there's another thing there. Anyway, I have to make a video about this relatively soon, and I'll talk more about this on why the SteamDeck is using an abnormal amount of total system power. But for all intents and purposes, the SteamDeck, watt for watt, is using more total power than the AYANEO 2. So you have to remember, like, there's the LCD, there's the RAM, there's the Wi-Fi. All of the other components consume power as well. So 15 watt from the package, and then you add all the other stuff, and that's how you'll get 26 watt total. In that regard, the SteamDeck uses more total system power. So when we compare these, I just want you to have that in your mindset, that the SteamDeck, in each one of the benchmarks shown, the SteamDeck is going to use a half a watt to 1 watt more than the AYANEO 2. And why this matters is the AYANEO 2 has 25% more battery capacity compared to the SteamDeck, while being significantly smaller in stature, like in form factor. It is a lot smaller. So for people, and I know because people have told me that they have found that the SteamDeck is too large for them. So if the SteamDeck is too large for you, but you like the form factor, the AYANEO 2 is a fantastic form factor for a 7-inch screen while having 25% more battery. The thing to note here is that the price of the AYANEO 2 is also more expensive than the SteamDeck. There is no touching the $400 SteamDeck anywhere. If you were to look at the higher end SteamDeck and compared it in value to the lower end AYANEO 2, the AYANEO Geek version, then this comparison starts to make sense. Because if you are paying 25 to 30% more, are you getting 25 to 30% more product? And the answer is yes. The AYANEO 2 has 25% more battery. It will get 20 to 30% better performance. You have to push more wattage into it. If we're at the lower end of wattage, you're not going to get those gains. And we're going to touch base on that in the benchmark in a second. But I just wanted to kind of level the playing field here so you guys can know what's going on. Speaking of the playing field, my methodology on this, the AYANEO 2 is running Windows 11 22H2. It's running AMD's latest 22.10.3 drivers. And all Windows power profiles are set for maximum performance across all TDPs. So AMD's Power Play is set for maximum performance. I do have the PCIe bandwidth set to maximum power savings because you want that even at any TDP. So that's just an understanding of what it was going on the AYANEO side. And then on the SteamOS side, all the tests were done with 3.3.2. Valve prepackages a bunch of drivers and stuff in all their drivers, so that is whatever it is. I just know what the SteamOS version number is. So that's my methodology when testing that. The other thing to be mindful of is that SteamOS has a compatibility layer called Proton, which is wrapping everything to run all DirectX stuff on there, outside of one game, which is like Tomb Raider, which has a Linux build itself. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to kind of get that out there because the AYANEO 2 finds itself in a position where it does compete against the higher end SteamDeck versus the lower end AYANEO 2. If we're going to be talking about comparisons, like truthfully, customer support is going to be far better on Valve side. It's just going to be leagues better. You will have a better time shipping back RMA stuff. Customer support, it's all going to be better on Valve side, provided that Valve ships to you. If Valve doesn't ship to your area, the AYANEO 2 is the only one there. And at that point, you are getting very good value there. So that's pretty much comparing the models. Outside of talking about benchmarks, let's go ahead and start getting into the benchmarks now. All right, so up first, we're going to be talking about Batman Arkham Knight. Now, the settings I'm using are 800p and all high settings, and VSync is off. So in high settings, the FPS limiter will be set to 90. I don't use any NVIDIA Hairworks or whatever that they got going on there. Now, the thing I want you to pay attention to here is that it is an Unreal Engine 3 game, and I want you to kind of focus on how performance changes around with these different engines. When we take a look at 9 watt TDP, the SteamDeck is getting around 49 FPS average, and the AYANEO 2 is getting around 30 FPS average. If we look at 11 watt, we're getting 52 FPS average versus the AYANEO's 40. And then at 15 watt TDP is just that area where we start to eclipse what the SteamDeck is doing. At this point, 15 watt to 15 watt, remember that the SteamDeck is using a half a watt to 1 watt more than the AYANEO 2 is. So battery life is much better on the AYANEO 2 at this point, and we're getting close to a 60 FPS average with these particular settings. Then if we want to push it a little bit more at 18 watt TDP, in this particular instance, almost a 20% performance increase going to 18 watt on the AYANEO 2. Obviously, we can push it a little bit further and get closer to 30% performance improvement if we push it to 28 watt. The only thing that I want to mention here is that 28 watt is excessive on the AYANEO 2 in a battery situation. You're going to get a little bit over an hour, around an hour of battery life. So that should really be reserved for being plugged in. 18 watt is a better situation, especially with how much power you're putting in versus how much battery life you're getting. So just keep that mindful. Next up, we're going to take a look at Borderlands 3. The settings I use is 800p. I am using DirectX 12. I am using the high preset. Now, this is an Unreal Engine 4 game. At 9 watt, the SteamDeck is still winning with a 23.95 FPS average, where the AYANEO gets 14.45. But at 11 watt, things rapidly change, and it looks like Unreal Engine 4 doesn't have the same benefits that Unreal Engine 3 does for the SteamDeck. At 11 watt, we are pretty much 25.5 FPS average. They are more or less neck and neck. And then at 15 watt, this is where we start to see a 10% bump on the AYANEO 2 versus the SteamDeck. At 15 watt TDP on the AYANEO 2, you're going to be getting close to 2 hours of battery life versus the 90 minutes or so on the SteamDeck. And then likewise, if you look at 18 and 28 watt, you can see how much further we can push into the system to even go past the SteamDeck at that point. Now, this is another game that I want you to take a look at. This is Cyberpunk. I'm using 800p. I am using the SteamDeck preset with medium texture quality. FSR is set to auto. This is before the FSR 2.1 patch. The thing I want you to kind of take a look at here has how Red Engine 3 kind of has similarities to Unreal Engine 3. If you just take an eyeball look at them, they have a textural feel to them that is similar. Much like at 9 watt, the SteamDeck just destroys the 6800U, the AYANEO 2, at 9 watt. If we go to 11 watt, we can start to wake up the system on 6800U. We can start to get better performance, but we're still 15% better on the SteamDeck. Only at 15 watt TDP, again, can we start to cross into that better zone of being better than the SteamDeck. So really, when you look at it, at 13 watt, generally speaking so far, is when the AYANEO 2 starts being better than the SteamDeck. Everything below 13 watt, the SteamDeck is going to win. And then if we take a look at 18 and 28 watt, we can start to push more power into it and get something better. But again, you're going to want to have something that either you can try to find a 40 hertz mode on the AYANEO 2, which isn't available yet. I could probably take a look into it later. But you're not going to be able to get a satisfactory 60 out of this. So you're going to have to make some compromises in quality or resolution. This one is super interesting. So Deus Ex Mankind Divided, I'm running at 800p. I'm using Ultra Setting preset and DirectX 12 API backend. In this particular area, we can see this particular engine just really messes up the SteamDeck pretty bad. At 9 watt TDP, we do not see that gigantic difference that we saw in those earlier tests. And then at 11 watt TDP, the 6800U is actually superseding here. And then at 15 watt TDP, we can start to see it really start to come across. After that, everything's just all gravy. So this is one test. This is one area. DirectX 12 games on Windows are going to have a better time. So if I were to take a look at this on Windeck, there might be a difference here. But if we take a look at it from SteamOS, which I feel most people are going to be running, this is what it's going to look like. And at this particular angle, it's just getting decimated by the 6800U. Next up, we have Horizon Zero Dawn. I am using 800p and the favorite performance preset. At 9 watt, once again, the Steam Deck is just taking the lead. 11 watt, once again, the same story. And 15 watt, same story, is where the 6800U AYANEO 2 starts to get better. We have a 10% lead at 15 watt TDP. Again, we're using less power. At 15 watt TDP, we're neck and neck, but we're getting 2 hours of battery life on the AYANEO 2 versus 90 minutes of battery life on the Steam Deck. And then at 18 watt, we can start to cross into getting a satisfactory 60 FPS. And then at 28 watt, which again, you'd have to be plugged in so you can start playing with quality settings or anything, but you'll still be able to get 60 FPS there. Now this one's interesting. This is Mortal Kombat 11. I'm using 800p Ultra max settings. This is an Unreal Engine 3 game. And what's really interesting here is that Unreal Engine 3 is just baller on the Steam Deck. I don't know what's going on with Proton or how Unreal Engine 3 is working, but Steam Deck is just steamrolling anything with Unreal Engine 3. If we look at 9 watt TDP, we're basically almost hitting 60 FPS average. At 11 watt TDP, we're perfectly fine at 60 FPS. The 6800U is just not catching up here. At 15 watt TDP, finally the 6800U crosses it. Only at 18 and 28 watt do I actually cross into like a more stable 60 FPS. The benchmark reported only a 59 FPS average, topping out for the Steam Deck. But ultimately, it plays perfectly fine at these ultra settings. You can just tone down the settings, get even better battery life on the Steam Deck. This, again, I just want to point out that like Red Engine 3, Unreal Engine 3, these engines just scream on the Steam Deck. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm using 800p, the balance preset. Now, balance preset, there are 20 notches across the entire preset when you're going across. So balance is 10 notches across. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is what I consider balance preset. And I'm using the Vulkan backend. When we have these particular settings, the Steam Deck, once again, is winning at 9 watt and 11 watt. And even at 15 watt, we find ourselves that the Steam Deck is still 5% better. Only when we push it to 18 watt do we get 10% better in the Rage engine. Likewise, for 28 watt, we start to pull ahead considerably more on the 6800U, but that is going to be an area where you're going to need to be playing plugged in or with an external battery bank. Next up is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This is 800p. I'm running DirectX 12. This is lowest and no TAA. I turned anti-aliasing off. At 9 watt TDP, the Steam Deck is just destroying this. 11 watt TDP, again, we're still a sizable lead over the 6800U on the AYANEO 2. And at 15 watt, we're basically neck and neck. It's 64 FPS average on both platforms. And once again, we can still push more power into 18 watt and 28 watt on the 6800U, where that's not possible on the Steam Deck. And this is where we're getting our better performance. Next, we have Strange Brigade. This is 800p Ultra preset using the Vulkan backend. Same story, 9 and 11 watt, Steam Deck is winning. Only at 15 watt are we 10% better. At 18 watt, we're 35% better. And then at 28 watt, we're like 40% better. But again, you have to push more power into the platform to be able to get those gains. But at 18 watt and 20 watt, you're going to be in a nice area where you're still going to be getting close to 2 hours of battery life on the AYANEO 2 and still having 10 to 20% more performance than the Steam Deck. So that's my video on the AYANEO 2 versus the Steam Deck. If you guys saw my WinMax 2 1600U versus Steam Deck, largely it's the same story. There was differences there. At the time I was using the WinMax 2 prototype, which has different TDP characteristics as well versus the production WinMax 2. The production WinMax 2 operates similar to what the AYANEO 2 does, which is why I have an inkling on, which gave me the idea to check the Steam Deck a little bit more and kind of find out where those power differences were coming from and why the Steam Deck is using more total system power. So that's going to be a video for another day, but ultimately the AYANEO 2, especially the lower end AYANEO 2, it finds itself in a really good place. It finds itself in a really good place value-wise. It is a premium Steam Deck at that point. In terms of how much more money you're spending, you are going to get that back in the screen is better, you have more battery, you have more performance, it's smaller, it feels really good. Like, if you like the form factor of the Steam Deck, you will love the AYANEO 2. The big difference here Obviously, you do not get the customer support that Valve will give you, and right now SteamOS is not going to be on AYANEO. So that's kind of where it is. For what it's worth, not every game is going to work on SteamOS, and any new update for a game might break compatibility with SteamOS. So there are some pitfalls to SteamOS in general, but SteamOS is a fantastically easy OS to use for playing PC games. Like, SteamOS just takes down a lot of barriers that a lot of people have difficulty with playing PC games in general. The AYANEO 2 has a portrait-based screen just like the SteamDeck does, and on Windows that can present problems for older Windows games where you have to wrap them in layers, which I've done in previous videos as well. So this is the bottom line. If you wanted something that was smaller than a SteamDeck but still had the same form factor, the AYANEO 2 is for you. If you wanted something that could have a little bit more battery life at 15 watt, the AYANEO 2 is for you. If you wanted a handheld that worked better on Windows, the AYANEO 2 is for you. The iSpace app fixes a lot of functionality that isn't really there on the Steam Deck at all. When you install Windows on the Steam Deck, you're not going to get the same feature and functionality, especially the 6800U has direct support from AMD, whereas the drivers on Windows for Steam Deck get updated periodically. So you're not going to have that same support that you will on the Windows side. So if you wanted to play more Windows game and have the wide breadth of compatibility, the AYANEO 2 is for you. So that's pretty much where it comes down to. The Steam Deck is still a fantastic handheld. It is absolutely the value king at the $400 model. So that's pretty much it. There is no wrong choice here. Hopefully that kind of painted the picture to get you a better understanding of what the differences are here and to fully understand what you're getting into. That's pretty much it. As always, guys, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.